Hi guys, I thought I would attempt the mammoth task of going through our TTC journey, our journey through infertility over the last 6 years. I feel like it's going to be a video that might be helpful to some of you. There's a lot of pain and a lot of heartbreak in the last 6 years. I try not to think about some of these things often. I was recently asked to write out a blog post about our journey through infertility, and this is kind of what sparked this video. Ever since I can remember, I have wanted to be a mother. Growing up, I had no idea what I wanted to do as a career. The one thing I was sure of was I wanted to have children. Because my desire to become a mother has always been so strong, I had sometimes feared it would be difficult for us. Not because we had a reason to think that, but just because it was something I really wanted. When I met my husband 13 years ago, we both knew we wanted to have children in our future. That was always a discussion we'd had very, very early on. Never did we imagine the heartache and setbacks we would face. We have felt the dark cloud of infertility hovering over us, and we have felt so left behind so often. Friends and family members having babies, couples who weren't even together when Tim and I started trying having babies, and it's a really isolating place to be. Our journey begins in early 2014, just shy of our 1-year wedding anniversary. When we found out I was pregnant just 3 months after trying, I was over the moon. We both were. I felt so grateful. My fear of it being difficult kind of faded, and I felt really, really blessed. I found out on Tim's birthday, and I had prepared a little surprise box for him just in case we did get a positive pregnancy test, and I was able to surprise him with that. At 6 weeks and 6 days along, we went in for our first ultrasound and saw a beautiful, strong heartbeat, 135 beats per minute, I still remember. That was amazing to see a little heart beating inside of me for the first time. And a few weeks after that, we went in for our close to 10-week scan. We were so excited to see how much our baby had grown. We did the scan with our OB. I remember before the scan, we were all very chatty, very light-hearted, but that chatter stopped the minute the ultrasound started. I remember looking at the monitor and seeing that our baby had grown, but not being able to see the flickering heartbeat that we had seen a few weeks earlier. I panicked. My stomach was in knots. I was so hoping he would move the wand and the heartbeat would suddenly appear. But I think in that moment I just knew the worst had happened. That moment felt like an eternity. That's when I heard those words, "I'm sorry, there's no heartbeat." I've talked about that moment so much. I feel like I'm a little bit numb to it. Miscarriage was not on our radar. I had not been spotting, not been bleeding. I had had a missed miscarriage. The baby was measuring 8 weeks, 4 days, and I should have been closer to 10 weeks. So we'd lost the baby a week before and hadn't known. My morning sickness had lessened slightly, but other than that, no idea. No fear going into that appointment that miscarriage was a possibility. The scan was a Friday and I was booked in for the D&C the following Monday. In a single moment, you can go from your heart being so full that your dream is becoming a reality to completely shattered in a million pieces. My first missed miscarriage was in October 2014, and all I wanted was to be pregnant again. And I was told by our OB that after miscarriage, you are extra fertile, and that gave us hope. But the months that followed that D&C ended in tears. Month after month, after month, after month, after month, negative pregnancy tests. 6 months passed and we made an appointment to get blood work done. Tim did a semen analysis, all came back normal. My AMH level was tested, normal. All of my hormone levels were tested. I had an ultrasound, everything looked fine, so we were told to continue trying for another 6 months. Another 6 months passed and we had no pregnancy, no sign of our rainbow baby. Once we surpassed the 1-year anniversary of our miscarriage, we decided it was time to do a laparoscopy, hysteroscopy surgery to check for anything that may be preventing pregnancy from happening. On the 25th of November 2015, I went in for my first laparoscopy, hysteroscopy surgery. The OB that had done my ultrasound where there was no heartbeat and my D&C did this laparoscopy surgery, and I will never forget the moment I woke up from that surgery to be told that my fallopian tubes were damaged. My left tube was partially blocked and my right tube was completely blocked. And we were told that IVF was likely going to be our only option to have a baby. When you are told that IVF is your only option to have a baby, that is heavy news to process. We had our post-op appointment a couple of days before Christmas. We were told we were great candidates for IVF, and our doctor even said, you will have your baby by next year. I'm not sure if he said guarantee it, but something along those lines. He was pretty confident, and we felt hopeful that at least we had IVF as an option. Despite feeling physically broken, I was thankful that our doctor seemed optimistic about us being great candidates for IVF. That Christmas, a few days later, was a really hard one. Of course, I'd hoped to either have a baby bump or a baby by then. 3 weeks later and a couple of weeks into the new year, one day shy of my 28th birthday, I found out I was pregnant. We were totally shocked. We had been waiting over a year for this moment, and we had just been told that we would need IVF to fall pregnant. We felt so sure that this was our meant to be miracle, our rainbow baby finally. The anxiety I felt during that pregnancy was a whole nother level. Pregnancy after miscarriage is intense. For me, I was just constantly fearful that history would repeat itself, and I really struggled with keeping my anxiety at bay. We had our first scan at 6 weeks exactly, and then just 4 days later we had another one at 6 weeks and 4 days and saw a beautiful heartbeat. To keep my anxiety at bay, I had another scan at 7 weeks and 5 days, and that was the first time we heard a heartbeat. It was pure magic. Hearing the heart that you've created beating was amazing. The next scan was at 8 weeks and 5 days. Tim was unable to make it to that appointment, unfortunately, so I went alone. Same OB as we'd had. As soon as I looked at the ultrasound monitor, I knew my worst nightmare had come true. I could not see the flickering light, and I just could not believe it. I was in shock. Our baby was measuring a week behind, so another missed miscarriage. I remember being at the reception counter, completely beside myself, sobbing, and I just could not stop asking myself why were we given this beautiful miracle, our rainbow baby we have waited over a year for, just to have it taken away from us. It just felt so cruel. I was trying to fill in the paperwork for my D&C surgery the following day, and I just could not do it. I couldn't stop crying. I remember getting in my car and having to make that really difficult phone call to Tim. I could barely speak through my tears, and I just remember how shocked he was. He was so sure this was meant to be, a meant to be miracle. So another baby was lost, and I had another D&C the next day. The pregnancy tissue was sent off for testing, and we were later told that the baby had triploid syndrome, and it was just nature's way. So it had 3 sets of chromosomes instead of 2. I think having an answer as to why it happened gave us a little bit of peace. This is where our IVF journey began, and this is when I started sharing on YouTube. He suggested we just jump straight into IVF will hopefully be successful. It'll be good to have a little bit of control over the situation, because we've just, over these many months of trying and having miscarriages, it's just been a journey that has felt like it's so out of our control. So Easter weekend arrived, which was end of March, and I had all of the IVF medications ready to go, but I was just waiting for my cycle to begin. And of course your body never does what you want it to do, so my cycle was over a week late. Getting impatient and wanting to start the injections, I took a pregnancy test and was again shocked to see a faint second line. This second line was different to my previous pregnancy tests in that it was a faint second line. It wasn't as strong as the others had been. I tested the next day, and the line had gotten lighter. When you see that second line on a pregnancy test, a second line is a positive pregnancy test. I knew it was likely a chemical pregnancy. Once my cycle began, I started injections. We knew IVF wasn't a guarantee, but we did feel really hopeful that IVF, our first cycle, could bring us our 3 children, which is what our doctor had said can happen. But our first IVF cycle did not turn out the way we had hoped. I had 12 eggs retrieved, of which 9 were mature, but only 2 fertilised, which was a massive shock. We didn't do ICSI. Our doctor assumed that because Tim's sperm analysis was normal, that ICSI wasn't necessary, but we had a really low fertilisation rate. I'm guessing if we don't do a 3-day transfer and wait till 5 days, there's a chance that we'll lose both. I wondered if we would even get any 5-day embryos. We had 1 embryo make it to day 5. We did a fresh embryo transfer. Never had we had an embryo transferred before. Surely this would work.
Yeah. She says all clear and we go fantastic, perfect.
Testing day arrived and there was a faint second line. And it hasn't been 3 minutes yet, so hopefully it'll get darker. But it was faint like my chemical pregnancy, and it soon faded away. 3 miscarriages in the last 3 months. I just cannot quite believe it that this has been our luck. It's exhausting to continue to feel hopeful and try to stay positive when it feels like it's always taken away. Our first IVF cycle had failed. We had no embryos frozen and we had to process a 4th loss. We began our second IVF stim cycle in June. We had the same protocol. The only thing we did differently was we added in ICSI. It's Wednesday night, the 15th of June. It's been a very long 24 hours for us. After filming the video yesterday, Tim and I were both on the same page and leaning towards cancelling the cycle. My OB did end up calling me last night at about 6 and explained to us why he thinks we shouldn't cancel. Basically, he said we've got 4 great looking follicles. We could cancel, but there's no guarantee that we'll get the same outcome later on. It's very possible the same thing could happen. And a lot of the time when they do collect more eggs, the quality isn't as good, or, you know, there's only a select few that are good quality. He said it would be a shame for us to pull the plug. Egg collection yesterday went pretty well. When they told us they'd collected 11 eggs, we didn't think much of it because we knew we only had really 4 mature. They gave us the news that of the 11 eggs they collected, 8 of them were mature and 6 of them fertilised. So we have 6 embryos currently. We did a fresh embryo transfer, and on that morning just before the transfer we were told that a lot of our embryos had stopped developing. We had 1 available to transfer and a possible other one that they were watching that may be frozen on day 6. That was really hard news to hear just before our transfer. We had been feeling really hopeful, and to hear that majority of our embryos had not survived. We left our embryo transfer feeling a bit flat, and concerned and fearful that our second IVF cycle would also be a complete failure. I'm off to my second acupuncture appointment now. I'm gonna re-zen, find my happy place. Feel grateful that we have one to transfer and it looked good. And just pray it sticks and is healthy. Yeah. It's just scary just having one, but it could be it. Sadly, our second embryo transfer resulted in a chemical pregnancy again. Tim's gonna be really upset too. And I have to go to work now. I don't understand why it's not working. Thankfully, that embryo that they were keeping an eye on did survive to day 6 and was frozen. It became very clear to us that IVF wasn't going to be as straightforward as we had hoped it would be. Our doctor couldn't find any reasons for our failed attempts and just put it down to bad luck. Not knowing any better and choosing to trust, we made plans for our frozen embryo transfer. We had planned to transfer that remaining embryo, but on Father's Day, early September 2016, I found out I had spontaneously fallen pregnant. If you keep believing, my heart is beating so fast. Like rain falling soft from the sky. If I'm able to give Tim this news on Father's Day, that is just going to be so special. Please let this be it. I remember taking that digital test and the word pregnant popping up, and I just honestly prayed so hard that this was going to be our baby. Since trying to have our baby, this was my 6th pregnancy and 5th pregnancy in 2016, but this was the beginning of our slow rising HCG beta blood test nightmare. Every second day for 2 weeks I had my blood drawn and waited for that phone call, praying that the numbers had doubled in 48 hours, not knowing whether or not this baby was going to stay with us. It was really, really, really challenging. I was hearing so many positive stories from YouTube and Instagram about slow rising HCG success stories, and I just did not know what to think of it all.
So the result is still going up.
Okay.
So it's 280 today.
Wow.
Yeah, which is kind of a nice rise, to be honest. It's easily doubled. It was 92 on Friday, so yeah, it's easily doubled. So doubled and a half. So that's pretty acceptable rise, to be honest.
Okay.
So who knows what's going on with you?
Yeah, I mean, I did read that it could double within 48 to 72 hours.
That's right, exactly, every 2 to 3 days. So,
yeah.
You know, that's certainly what we would call an acceptable rise.
Yeah, the nurse on Friday said it was safe to say that it wasn't going to be ongoing.
Yeah, because the increase from the 5th to the 7th, like 43 to 65, wasn't particularly good.
No.
So it's really hard to determine what's going on, to be honest, Celeste.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I guess it's just a matter of we just have to keep tracking.
Okay.
I know that's just torturous for you.
The level's gone up again, so not quite double, but it's gone up from 280 to 474.
Okay.
So it's heading in the right direction. It's just annoying because it's being slow on you, isn't it?
On our way to our ultrasound appointment, I got my blood drawn this morning, so we'll get that result this afternoon, my 6th beta. You're freaking out now. So I've just come out of the appointment after waiting an hour in the waiting room. Our doctor was he wasn't feeling positive about the pregnancy progressing whatsoever. He doesn't believe it will. The good news is the pregnancy is located in my uterus and not in my fallopian tube. He thinks we should prepare for this pregnancy not to continue. Why does this keep happening? Why can't things go right? I'm still waiting for my blood test results from this morning. Trying to stay hopeful. But after our doctor's reaction, we're really not feeling very hopeful. Tim said walking out, let's hope this baby proves him wrong. I mean, this is why we're so guarded, because it's just always bad news. A roller coaster, and I don't know if I should be staying hopeful still, because
roller coasters are meant to be fun. This is not even fun. It will happen, and it's got to happen because no one wants this a sad ending.
I hope we have a happy ending. It's not fair. I've said that heaps of times, but
Celeste, I've got your result from today's blood test, and the levels have gone up to 925.
okay. So has that doubled?
Not quite.
Not quite.
Oh, actually, hang on. Well, my maths.
No, I can't even think right now.
Almost, hasn't it? 475 times 2. It has. Almost. Not quite. 950 would be doubled.
And it's 925.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
So, look, I wouldn't get my hopes up, let's put it that way.
Mhm.
I wouldn't be banking on it.
Even though it's doubling or almost?
It's sort of just that bit slow though, like from your 280.
But isn't it meant to double within 48 to 72
to
hours?
48 hours.
I thought it was 48 to 72 hours.
No, 24 to 48.
I was told differently.
Yeah, no. Who told you differently?
One of the nurses. And it's all over the internet as well. It says 48 to 72 hours.
Yeah, we always say sort of 24 to 48. So it's just shy of the doubling again at 925 when it really should be around 950. So look, I would just be very wary. All right?
What about my progesterone?
It's on the low side. It's 49.9.
Right. What should it be?
Around 100.
Okay.
Yeah. So your progesterone has in fact dropped since that initial result on the 7th, where it started off at 97.5, which would be acceptable, but it dropped to 89.3 and it's dropped now to 49.9, which indicates to me that it's unlikely to be an ongoing pregnancy.
I am beside myself. I just don't know what to do. My HCG has doubled almost, but my progesterone's plummeted. But obviously they don't have much faith in this pregnancy being ongoing. So I don't know what to do. I don't know whether I should be taking... I've still got leftover progesterone from my IVF cycle. Or whether it's just not a viable pregnancy and I should just let nature take its course. But my HCG levels are rising, doubling in 48 hours. The last two have pretty much, this one has pretty much. I'm a mess, it's all catching up on me, this whole roller coaster.
I've got today's blood test here. So it's gone to 1,860 today. So it was sort of 925 3 days ago.
I mean, the last one close, almost doubled in 48 hours, but obviously this one hasn't.
Yeah, no, it hasn't quite. The 925, that was actually 3 days ago. So it's still a bit sluggish. Are you bleeding or anything at all, Celeste?
No.
No bleeding. What about any pain or anything?
No.
The gestational sac should be closer to 4 centimetres. I can't quite remember what number he said, but a lot bigger than it is. Just wish we knew when things were going to go right.
Today is 2,060, so it's really only gone up 200, nothing really significant.
Alrighty.
So no, not looking
Okay. Closer to 7 weeks, I had another ultrasound and the gestational sac had only grown slightly. And I had another D&C the same day as my ultrasound. It was at this stage of our journey that our incredible friend Olivia, Liv, approached us and offered to be our gestational surrogate for the first time. To have someone sincerely offer that and be willing to give us the gift of life was just There are no words that can describe how grateful we felt in that moment and continue to feel. At that stage, we weren't ready to go down the path of gestational surrogacy. There were still things we hadn't tried yet, but it was a comfort knowing we had that possible option in our future. After that D&C, I was anxiously waiting for weeks to get the results back from the testing of the pregnancy tissue. I wanted and needed answers. Anyone who's experienced a loss will know. You want answers, you want reasons as to why things happen. We were hoping that the results would provide us with answers that we so desperately needed at this point to hopefully prevent us from going on to have further pregnancy losses. We lost 6 pregnancies at that point and we were done with recurrent miscarriage. I had had all of the autoimmune testings done, all of the blood clotting tests. Tim and I had also done the karyotype testing, so both of our chromosomes were tested. Everything came back normal. We just needed answers. I was not taking bad luck as an answer. I remember feeling ready to hear what our doctor had to say, but I did not prepare myself for what he told us in that appointment. He forgot to send the pregnancy tissue off for testing. So we were left with 0 answers. I'm just so angry and upset. It could have given us answers and given me a bit of peace as to why it happened. And it's crucial information in moving forward, in knowing what's causing these miscarriages. Just can't even believe that we don't have answers. At that point, we were running out of things to get tested for. I asked to have my MTHFR gene tested and my natural killer cells in my uterus tested, and my doctor dismissed both of those as necessary. In preparation for our frozen embryo transfer, I asked if I could be put on prednisolone or prednisone, steroid, and Clexane, which is a blood thinner, just in case, because I had heard that sometimes those 2 things can help someone who's experienced recurrent pregnancy loss and is unexplained. He refused to give me Clexane, but finally agreed to give. My camera battery just died. My OB agreed to put me on a low-dose steroid, prednisone, which I was thankful to at least be given the steroid. Previously, all of my embryo transfers, the only thing I was given was progesterone pessaries, so it was nice to be doing something a little bit different. November, we began our first FET, frozen embryo transfer cycle. The 2nd of December 2016 was the day of our frozen embryo transfer. The morning of our transfer, we received the call no one wants to get, and were told that our embryo didn't survive the thaw. 2016 was just a nightmare. 2015 was a nightmare. No pregnancy, for different reasons. IVF did not turn out the way we had hoped. The chance of an embryo not surviving thaw is very low. I don't remember the statistic off the top of my head, but we just always seem to fall on the wrong side of the odds. This was the point where we decided we would seek a second opinion. We wasted no time. On the 4th of January, we had an appointment with a specialist at a different clinic. We left that appointment feeling so defeated. That specialist wanted to keep us on the same protocol that we'd done the previous 2 cycles, not change a thing. She thought that changing the lab would be enough, and we were just not happy with that being the only change. We had hoped to possibly have new suggestions, and we just didn't get that. I then made an appointment with a pretty well-known specialist here in Melbourne, and that appointment was on the 16th of March. She was willing to test my MTHFR gene and my uterine natural killer cells. And of course, I have an MTHFR gene mutation and a very high, very elevated natural killer cell levels. Making that discovery was a relief, I guess. Knowing it could be treated knowing that could be the reason. Of course, elevated natural killer cells don't just happen, there's always a cause, and we didn't know what was causing the elevated natural killer cells. Obviously I'd had recurrent miscarriage, but it was at least something. And so in May 2017 we did our third IVF stim cycle at our new clinic. We did a totally different protocol. I did a long downreg protocol rather than the antagonist protocols that I'd done. So I was on the pill and then I was on different medications. And I had 20 eggs collected from that cycle, which is a lot more than previously. 15 were mature, but only 4 fertilized with ICSI. You start to believe you should be prepared for the bad news and the roadblocks that keep coming your way. When we received the fertilization report, I was so thinking it was over. Of 20 eggs collected, we only had 4 fertilized. Everyone knows as the days go on after fertilization, the embryo numbers drop off, and we had experienced that. I started to wonder if the IVF meds were having an ill effect on my egg quality. Miraculously, 3 out of our 4 embryos made it to freeze, which was very unexpected. One of the 3 embryos wasn't hatching, so was unable to be tested, which is one of the embryos we still have frozen. The other 2 were sent off to be PGS tested. My fear was that both of them would come back abnormal. We waited a few weeks for those results. Of the 2 embryos that were biopsied, 1 is normal, which is amazing. I'm so relieved to have at least 1 that is normal. In August 2017, I had my first endometrial scratch in preparation for our frozen embryo transfer, and the following month, on the 7th of September, we transferred our PGS normal embryo.
I've been praying through the evening.
How you feeling?
Excited. The embryo thawed perfectly, which is amazing news.
Okay.
Saw a photo and it's hatching. Looks good.
Let the hour come. Oh,
Love you.
I love you too.
oh, 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 oh. I've been breaking through the morning.
It's done. All went well.
I've been breaking through the day.
I had done an intralipid infusion. I was on 20 milligrams of prednisone, so quite a high dose. I was on baby aspirin, Clexane, and progesterone pessaries. I've peed in a cup. It's in the bathroom. Haven't dipped any tests yet. Tim and I are going to do it together. I'm just really scared. Knowing we're finding out in the next 10 minutes is... I just so want this to be it. And we're so grateful for everyone who's been praying for us and sending us messages and kind wishes. We've been trying for 3.5 years. I've had 2 missed miscarriages, 3 chemical pregnancies, a blighted ovum, so 6 miscarriages in total.
And I'm hard to read.
Good luck.
This was the most hopeful we had felt up until this point. We had transferred a known chromosomally normal embryo. I was on an immune suppressing protocol. We were feeling good. Crushingly, our embryo didn't even try to implant. After our failed FET, it was suggested I do another laparoscopy, hysteroscopy surgery. And again, got another shock when I woke up from that surgery, and she told me that my fallopian tubes were perfectly healthy, looking amazing. There was no damage like I'd been previously told, and everything else looked perfect, in her words. No issues at all. She said you should be happy, but I don't think she understood that everything looking perfect at this point is not what you want to hear when you just want a reason for why this is all happening, a reason that can be fixed, that you can actively do something that will give you hope for the next try. To hear that everything looks fine, and knowing there's something that's not fine because all of these losses is not normal. And so I asked, why am I not getting pregnant? And she said, that's the $1 million question. And that was that. At this point, I hadn't been pregnant for over a year, so another year had passed with no pregnancy. It's weird, 2015 was a year of no pregnancy. 2016, I had 5 pregnancies. 3 of them were spontaneous. Then nothing in 2017. And everything looked normal. There was no physical reason. So with no damaged tubes and everything looking perfect, we were placed back in the unexplained infertility category, which is not a good place to be. We knew I had elevated natural killer cells, but other than that, no answers. I was frustrated at my previous clinic because for 2 years I'd believed my tubes were damaged and they weren't. My specialist told me that sometimes when they flush the dye through the tubes can spasm, which can block the dye from being flushed through and perhaps be interpreted as damaged. As I was recovering from that surgery, our incredible friend Liv, again a year after initially offering, mentioned again that the offer to be our gestational surrogate was still there if we ever wanted to explore that. I think we felt really defeated. We had done an immune suppressing protocol and transferred a PGDS normal embryo and it hadn't worked. And I was losing confidence in my body completely. In December 2017, we decided to seek yet another specialist's opinion. The last thing we hadn't yet tested for was the HLA DQ alpha gene, which specialists have mixed opinions about, but it was our last thing to be tested, I guess. And this new specialist agreed it should be something to be tested, and it came back as a partial match. So Tim and I share one DQ alpha gene, which definitely could be the explanation for our elevated natural killer cell levels, our recurrent pregnancy loss, the reason why I haven't fallen pregnant. Reproductive immunology is quite controversial between fertility specialists, which makes things even more challenging for the people who are in this boat. And I think it's why so many people and couples are diagnosed as unexplained infertility. There is no such thing as unexplained infertility. There's always a reason. It's just a matter of finding the right doctor who is willing to dig deeper for you. So when a couple share this kind of genotype, it can cause the woman's body to not recognize the embryo as something that should be there, which switches on the immune response and destroys the embryo. With several exposures with repeated pregnancies, the natural killer cells become activated, making future implantation harder and harder. So I've practically become immune from falling pregnant. Treatment for this condition is not done by many specialists in Australia. LIT, which stands for lymphocyte immunisation therapy, is something that not a lot of specialists do here in Australia. There's only 2, and it's not even something that's FDA approved in the United States. Some people have success after it, some people don't. It's a tricky one. But at this point we were willing to give it a go. So on the 18th of January 2018, we went in for our first LIT treatment. Tim had 8 vials of blood taken. The blood was spun to extract the white blood cells, which were then injected under my skin in my arm. Its goal is to bring down the woman's immune response and create antibodies in the woman. The second half of the LIT treatment was done a month later, so on the 15th of February 2018. Once the treatment was completed on that day, it remains effective for 6 months. On the 16th of March, I had an appointment with an IVF nurse to go over my protocol for our frozen embryo transfer. The embryo we had frozen that was untested. 5 days after that appointment, our world came crashing down when we very suddenly and unexpectedly lost Kath, Tim's beautiful mum, my mother-in-law, who I miss every second of every day. She had a stroke. It was very sudden and the worst day of our lives. She was one of our biggest supporters and encouragers, and really wanted us to become, and wanted so badly for Tim and I to have the baby that we've been trying to have, and it just breaks my heart that I won't get to see her holding our baby. I was really looking forward to her being a part of our children's lives and them getting to know her, and knowing that's not going to happen is heartbreaking, not only for us, but I wanted that for her. I wanted her to share in our success after all of the heartbreak and everything she'd been through with us, all the disappointments. She was one of our biggest cheerleaders. Losing her is something we could never have prepared ourselves for. We needed time to grieve. The embryo transfer was cancelled. In a very dark place and needing to do some soul searching. We had never been on a holiday together before. We'd been together for 10 years and we hadn't been on a proper holiday. We never went on a honeymoon. It was needed after everything we'd been through and all the grief. A couple of months before we lost Kath, my dear dad was shockingly diagnosed with motor neuron disease, otherwise known as ALS, which is one of the most horrifically cruel illnesses. And at that time I was still processing that news as well. I mean, I'm still processing it now. It's something that weighs really heavily on my heart. Yeah, so much heaviness was weighing on our shoulders, and we decided, like I said, end of 2018 to go on a holiday and escape from it for a little bit. We got to visit dear friends of ours that we met through YouTube in England. We stayed with them for a week, which was amazing. We travelled around Europe for a month, and it was just what we needed. While we were over there, we were trying to work out what our next steps would be, where we wanted to go from here. The 6 months of LIT treatment, of course, expired. We hadn't really been trying, but we hadn't been preventing. But with everything going on, it just was obviously not. Either it wasn't an optimal time to conceive, or the treatment didn't work. Who knows? Was I on steroids? I think I was. I was on steroids for that period of time as well. So I was on steroids for a very long time. I was on dexamethasone, which made my face balloon, more so than the prednisone. I was done being on the drugs, and I, like I said, had lost all faith in my body at this point. And Liv was still making it known that her selfless and incredible offer was still available to us if we wanted to explore that. And I had been thinking about it and processing it in my mind that we may possibly have to explore gestational surrogacy in the future for quite a long time. I reached a point of peace about going down that road before Tim did. When we returned from our holiday, we knew that if we were to do gestational surrogacy, we needed to create more embryos. We also knew that our fertilization result and embryo quality had been a little off. We felt like there was something going on there. So I organised for Tim to do the sperm DNA fragmentation test, because sometimes there can be fragmented sperm even with a perfectly normal semen analysis. So in December, Tim got that test done, and it came back with a high number of fragmented sperm. So that could have been another reason as to why we had such low fertilization results. In December 2018, Liv and I went to see a new clinic, the clinic we're currently at, to sit down with the specialist and kind of discuss our plan for doing gestational surrogacy. The sun's setting, so I'm hoping this isn't getting too dark. up the light a bit. Having the sperm DNA fragmentation results, we were really keen on trying to improve those numbers before our 4th IVF egg collection cycle. For the first 5 to 6 months of 2019, Tim and I made changes to our lifestyle and diet. We usually ate pretty well anyway. Tim cut out caffeine, alcohol, processed foods. He did really well for a good 5 to 6 months. We exercised more. We were just really conscious about bringing those fragmented numbers down and getting our health and bodies in the best possible place in preparation for our 4th IVF egg collection. We were on all the antioxidants and vitamins you could possibly be on. I think I was spending around $300, sometimes $400 every fortnight on vitamins. It got very expensive, but we just wanted to get the best possible outcome. For this 4th egg collection cycle, I had looked into Tim possibly doing Tessie, which is where they surgically extract the sperm. Apparently that reduces the number of fragmented sperm. My specialist didn't think it was necessary, so we didn't do that. Also found out that it was going to be a lot more expensive than I had initially thought it would be, so we agreed to not do the Tessie. On the 14th of June 2019, egg collection day arrived.
All your pain fade to memory one
We had 8 eggs collected, and we received the call the next day to let us know that 4 eggs were mature and 0 of them fertilized. Total fertilization failure. After 6 months of being the healthiest we possibly could be, doing everything right, we were so defeated. We felt we were crushed. Tim was angry. Totally understand why. I felt anger as well. When you put everything you have into trying and you continue to fail, it is soul destroying. It is so testing on every single level. At that point, we were 5 years into our TTC journey and we felt no closer. How could we do gestational surrogacy with no embryos? It just felt like our options were disappearing. Thankfully, our specialist offered us a discount to try again. It was suspected I was triggered too early, so my eggs weren't ready. I did a totally different protocol for my 5th egg collection cycle and started birth control in July. So I was on a similar protocol as I was. It was exactly the same protocol actually as I was for my 3rd IVF cycle, where we got 1 PGS normal embryo. So I was on birth control for about a month. We did do Tessie for that cycle, and egg collection was in September.
of your shoulder. Everything we fear will go away.
We'll get dressed.
The day after egg collection, we found out that of the 18 eggs collected, 15 were mature, a lot better than 4, and 6 fertilized, which is still on the lower side. Tim did get the sperm surgically extracted, and it seems to have made a bit of a difference. I mean, 6 fertilizing is better than none, but anyone who's done IVF will know that the days following egg collection are often the hardest, for me anyway. I'll do all the injections, but those days after egg collection and waiting for the fertilization report and get the updates from the embryologist on how the embryos are going is so anxiety provoking. It was a very intense wait. Thankfully, by day 5, we had 4 of the 6 fertilized embryos make it to freeze, which was amazing. 3 of them were able to be biopsied and sent off for PGS testing, and 2 of the 3 came back PGS normal, which was incredible. and they were a lot better grades than what we had previously had. 2 of our embryos were 5AA, which is the best quality. We got those results in October 2019, and a part of me was feeling like perhaps we should do another IVF egg collection cycle before the end of the year, just to bank some more embryos, just to have some more as backup before we start the gestational surrogacy process. But Tim was done, which I totally understand. It's a lot to put yourself through emotionally, physically, financially. It's just a lot, and we decided that we would remain hopeful for the 4 embryos we had frozen and just trust that one of those 4 would be our baby. So in November we began the gestational surrogacy process. Here in Victoria, Australia, you have to complete a gestational surrogacy application. There's criteria that needs to be met, and the criteria needs to be completed and submitted with the application, and then a hearing date is set where the 4 of us meet a panel of 10 people and they decide whether or not we get approval to move forward with gestational surrogacy. So that process began in November. We began counselling sessions. We did multiple counselling sessions, just Tim and I, and then just Luke and Liv, and then all 4 of us. We also had an external psychologist, so external from the clinic. Tim and I then had to see a lawyer. Luke and Liv had to see a lawyer and get legal advice. We had to get police checks done. We had to get child protection checks done, all of us. So that whole process only took us 2.5 months. It didn't take us long to get through it all. And our hearing date for the patient review panel was set for the 5th of March 2020. So ready to start this new chapter with our beautiful friends. Can't believe it's happening. Just hoping we get approval today and all goes well. We had our hearing for our gestational surrogacy application on Thursday last week, so a few days ago. A lot of you who follow me on Instagram will already know the outcome of that hearing. So relieved to have been told yes by the patient review panel. Yes, we can go ahead with an embryo transfer and begin our gestational surrogacy journey. Liv and I wasted no time. The following week, after we got approval, we had an appointment with the fertility specialist to discuss the frozen embryo transfer cycle, and Liv also got an endometrial scratch done in preparation for the transfer. I mean, this was March this year, so this next part of the journey is very new. I mean, this is the longest video in history, and I'm hoping I'll be able to edit it down. It's going to take me a while to get through this, so by the time it's uploaded, it'll probably be December. If you have gotten this far, thank you for listening to me and for showing interest in our story. I hope that some of the information in this video helps some of you in some way in your own journeys. I know knowledge is power in this journey, especially when some doctors aren't willing to dig a little deeper and put it down to bad luck. I'm a strong believer in being your own advocate and doing your own research, not being afraid to talk to your specialist or ask questions. And if you don't feel like your specialist is advocating enough for you, find another one. Seek second, third, fourth opinions. If you have any questions at all, please leave them down below. I'll be happy to answer them. Thank you again for listening. I love you all. Speak to you guys soon.